Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start this lesson off on our literary devices by sharing my screen. So we should all have in front of us this handout, this literary device handout. So I'm going to go through and show you how I expect you to complete this handout. And this handout is for your benefit. It's going to be used as a reference later on in the lesson. So it is really important that you get as much information as you can down. So on the literary devices handout, you should have a printed copy in front of you, which is what I suggest. If you can't have a printed copy in front of you, just make a copy and you'll have a digital one. And you can go through and type in the definitions. So we're going to go through a presentation. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint with you, providing the definition and examples for different literary devices. It's your job to write down the definitions and any example that stands out to you that'll help you remember the term. So if you would like to draw a picture, draw a picture. If you want to insert a picture, if you're doing it online, insert a picture. I do better with written examples. So as you can see, I've written out my example. So the first term is literary device itself. So as you can see, I've included the definition and an example of what a literary device could be. So have your literary device handout in front of you as I go through this presentation. So as I showed you, this is what it would look like. On your handout, you should see it has the term literary devices for this one, the definition, and then some different examples for you to write down. Moving on to alliteration, this is our first term. So you should be writing down the definition as I go over it and including an example. So an alliteration is a repetition of consonant sounds in the same line. One of the most famous examples I've included is Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. It's also a tongue twister. It could be a character's name. For example, Marvel uses this a lot, alliteration with Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, Wade Winston Wilson. They use alliteration a lot. So I'm gonna pause for a second, let you finish writing down your definition and your example. And feel free to pause the video at any time. So our next term is assonance, and this is very similar to alliteration. Assonance is the repetition of vowels in the same line. So instead of consonants, it's vowels. So the cat ran after the A sound, the alligator passed the pastry shop and the alleyway. So it's when it's a repeated vowel sound. Imagery is our next term, and imagery is used to make readers perceive the text with their 5 sentences. So many times authors will use descriptive words, a lot of adjectives, and it's anything that makes you visualize something. You feel like if just by the words the author used, you could see it in your head. A lot of times smell, they'll describe the smell of baked bread, or they'll describe a not so nice smell. They say it smells like really gross. It's anything that makes the readers feel like anything with their 5 sentences, but beyond just reading. A metaphor is a term that directly refers to one thing by mentioning another. So it compares 2 things. A metaphor is similar to a simile. The difference is the metaphor does not use the word like or as. So an example of a metaphor is from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and old Marley was as dead as a doornail. The next term is repetition. Repetition emphasizes a point through the repetition of a word or a series of words. Music does this a lot. I've included Taylor Swift as the example here from her song The Last Time. It's common in a lot of poetry. They'll repeat a phrase or multiple phrases. The poem Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe does this. Edgar Allan Poe repeats, "I am my Annabel Lee" multiple times throughout the poem. And this really emphasizes what is being repeated. The next term is a hyperbole. This is an exaggerated statement or claim not meant to be taken literally. So a lot of them are in our everyday talking and we don't even realize. "I'm so hungry I could eat you." That's a play on the phrase, "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." Obviously, I'm not going to eat a horse. So it's things that aren't meant to be taken literally. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. My family said it growing up. "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." I'm so tired I could sleep forever. You're really only going to sleep like 8 hours. The next term is irony. So irony is a little more complicated, not really. It's what on the surface appears to be the case or to be expected differs radically from what is actually the case. So the expression of one's meaning by using language that normally signifies the opposite, typically for humorous or emphatic effect. So in the example to the left, the stop sign says no stopping anytime. And to the right, one of the most famous examples of irony is when in the play Romeo and Juliet, spoiler alert, at the end of the play, Juliet kills herself thinking Romeo is dead. And it's ironic because the reader, we know Romeo's not dead. And then Romeo wakes up and irony. So these were all the terms that should be on your literary device handout. So make sure you have that completed and continue on through the lesson. As always, email me with any questions.